people will say, well, I know somebody who's got 2 or 3 of those characteristics. Are they psychopaths? And I'll say, of course not. What you've got to do is have a cluster, a combination of characteristics that hangs together.
In the present climate of the United States, prison therapy programs are no longer fashionable. But Vermont State Penitentiary is an exception. Behind its high security fences, in a special unit, they have some of the most difficult criminals in the country, including psychopaths.
This particular unit represents the uncontrollable, the undesirables, the ones that refuse to program, is what they refer to as the most disruptive. I'm here serving a 5 to 20-year sentence for sexually molestation of 4 boys, the ages of 4 to 12.
Wayne has been here for more than 10 years and perhaps has 10 more to do. He scored 40 on the psychopathy checklist. It's the maximum possible and extremely rare. The authorities here believe that time and money spent trying to reform psychopaths like Wayne is a worthwhile investment.
I hope that the tools that I've learned in this program and other programs like it, I can...
Head of the therapy program, Tom Powell, knows he's working in relatively uncharted territory, and Hare's checklist is invaluable.
Dr. Hare has provided us with some significant advances in understanding in detail the syndrome that is now known as psychopathy. He's validated a scheme that's quite good in terms of looking at a set of antisocial behaviors as well as interpersonal traits which distinguish these folks. What can you tell us about your early years, where you grew up?
Okay. Well, I just turned 45, the 23rd of January.
Wayne's sessions with Tom Powell are little more than conversation therapy, for no one yet has any real idea what works in the treatment of psychopaths. But Powell is discovering the complexity of the personalities he's dealing with.
I keep to myself. I do a great deal of studying. I do a great deal of reading. I do a great deal of writing.
Psychopaths can be wondrous in many ways, and one of them is their ability to engage otherwise knowing and well-informed therapists about their sincerity and their desire to change. And I have found it very easy to be seduced by the tone and the affect and the engagement of a psychopath who, with great earnestness, tells me that he's finally found the light and has seen the error of his ways.
The therapists are wonderful. I learn a great deal from them. Sometimes it can be hard. I suppose that's the way it's supposed to be when you're growing up. I'm ready to go now. I know that that decision will come from others who have already seen. They've seen my change.
Carl is another serious psychopath in the Vermont program, a 36 on the checklist.
I had a statutory rape on a minor, 15. I was arrested for an aggravated sexual assault on a female child. She was 4 years old.
I think it's very important when therapists undertake to work with psychopaths that they know the entire record and that they not be deceived into believing that they have therapeutic magic that can work with these individuals.
It's not good for me to be around any female child. I'd rather be a young child or a teenager.
In this gentleman, we see a striking shallowness of affect. He speaks a language of treatment that is quite articulate in many ways. He's able to talk about his risk factors, his past, in what appears to be a deceptively open way.
One of my main concerns is that when I someday return to society is that I'm going to have to be very careful where I'm at all times and who I'm around.
If one looks beyond the words and gauges the affect, the emotion, the feeling that goes with them, at that point you start to see a disconnect with what he's saying and what he's experiencing. And I think that is characteristic of psychopaths.
critics and commentators in the past have said that to study 1% of the general population seems to be a waste of time. Why not spend our time studying criminals in general? There are far more criminals than there are psychopaths. And even when we get them into prison, say, well, we're only talking about 15 or 20% of the prison population, is it worth really paying attention to them? It sure is. And the reason is there may only be a small number of psychopaths in the population, but the damage they inflict on society is very widespread. And in fact, I would estimate that the 15 or 20% that I'm talking about are responsible for at least half of the violent crime in our society. So we've got to understand this particular disorder.
And what about those who are not behind bars? The successful psychopaths who are still out there, wreaking havoc. In America, it's estimated that 1 in 100 of the population is psychopathic. But psychopaths make up 20% of the prison population. And this criminal 20% is responsible for half of all violent crimes. It's a fact that law enforcement agencies take very seriously. Officers in the line of fire are now given special training in dealing with psychopaths.
Don't shoot!
We deal with primarily the most violent of violent crimes, the most horrendous of all the crimes in the world.
One gun on the ground.
In this kind of work, perhaps most of the offenders that I see are primarily psychopaths. And for me, the importance of people in law enforcement, whether it be in parole or corrections, in a state agency or in a federal agency, to be able to understand these people is really critical. Now, perhaps a patrol officer won't encounter a psychopath every day, but when they do, it may be in that one terribly important case or in that one very violent crime, and if they miss it, the crime can go unsolved, the body can go unlocated, the victim can go for long periods of time without being found. So these people, when they do act out violently, can cause just an enormous amount of trouble and problems and heartache. The nature of some of their offenses can be so unbelievable that to normal people, we have to have an explanation for that. And one of the most common explanations is they have to be crazy. But psychopaths are not crazy. They know right from wrong, and if you're standing on a street corner and they're next to a uniformed police officer and they wanted to commit a robbery, they would know not to do it as long as the police officer's there.
Psychopaths may not be insane, but they're certainly capable of irrational and unexpected behavior. In 1995 in Los Angeles, where the bizarre is always several sizes larger than life, an extraordinary incident shocked the city and challenged the police.
As we were on the San Diego freeway heading towards the off-ramp that became famous as to where he exited on Sunset Boulevard, there was literally hundreds of people standing on the freeways and the overpasses waiting for him to come by.
Millions watched, mesmerized, as the prime suspect in a murder case was pursued by police on primetime television. The fact that he was a national hero didn't exclude the possibility that he was also psychopathic.
Back up, please. Get out of the way. Get back here. You got any comments? You don't know anything, sir? Have you been told you're under arrest, O.J.?
O.J. Simpson certainly has some of the features of psychopathy. He is glib, he's superficially charming, he has a grandiose sense of worth, he's impulsive, he's certainly committed spouse abuse, he's committed antisocial acts. Like a psychopath, he had the history of being a juvenile delinquent early on in his life. He certainly seems to show a lack of emotional depth, the type of features that go to make a cold-blooded killer.
Our task was the same, no matter if it was O.J. Simpson a gang member.